ਸੋ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ। ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਜ਼ੇਬ ਨੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸੈਕਸ਼ੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਲਚਰਲੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਬਿਠਾਈ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਮਰਦ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਔਰਤ ਨੂੰ ਓਵਰ ਪਾਰ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜੇਕਰ ਇਹ ਸੈਕਸ਼ੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੇ ਹੀ ਵੱਖਰੇ ਨਜ਼ਰੀਏ ਨਾਲ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਐਡਵੈਂਟ ਆਫ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪੋਰਨੋਗ੍ਰਾਫਿਕ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਆ ਗਈਆਂ ਉਸਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੈਕਸ਼ੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਖਰੀ ਹੀ ਇਮੇਜ ਜੋ ਹੈ ਮਰਦ ਦੇ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਿਠਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਕਿਵੇਂ ਇਹ ਚੇਂਜ ਪਰਸੈਪਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਓ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਕੈਲੀ ਮੌਂਗਜ਼ੇਬ ਨਾਲ। So before the break, like you were talking about this definition of sexual health. So World Health Organization, what does it say about it?
So the definition of sexual health is a state of physical, emotional, mental, and social well-being in relation to sexuality. It is not merely the absence of disease, dysfunction, or infirmity. Sexual health requires a positive and respectful approach to sexuality and sexual relationships, as well as having the possibility of having pleasurable and safe sexual experiences, free of coercion, discrimination, and violence. For sexual health to be attained and maintained, the sexual rights of all persons must be respected, protected, and fulfilled.
Right.
So it's almost like a human rights issue.
Oh yeah, it is.
You know?
Yeah.
So again, this topic runs deep, and it's a critical issue in our society.
No doubt, but as you have said, it's a human rights issue which needs to be looked into. But what about the oppressive and abusive attitude of the people at homes?
Yes.
So how does that influence in again, like you talked about pornography, which has which has made sexuality as a different image in the minds of the men for women.
Yeah.
So when you deal about these, when you talk with your clients about these issues, what comes out about this oppressive and disgraceful attitudes, I would say?
Well, there's 2 points of view. You know, there's those who are sort of on the receiving end.
Right.
There's terms like victim, okay, and then there's the perpetrator.
Right.
So we tend to have a fairly harsh approach, or no, sorry, I don't want to say that, a harsh attitude towards those who perpetrate these kind of abuses. The problem with that, if we don't make space and realize that we are all in this, most people have some level of dysfunction, most people have a level of distortion when it comes to sexuality because of the day that we're living in.
Right.
So, people who find themselves having done shameful things or harmed someone, for example, and start to realize and want to deal with that, there's a tremendous amount of shame, and we need to make space for both men and women, people who have been abused, as well as those who have abused, to see that their past behavior does not necessarily indicate how their future will be. We have to have hope. That there's a possibility for change, that we can relate to one another in a healthy way. We can bring in respect. It's like the many conversations we have in the previous series, that it's when you have a dark room, it's hard to fight the darkness, but you can bring in the light.
Right.
So when there is violence in a relationship, there is an abuse of power.
Right.
There is a lack of respect and dignity, compassion, many things. So when we start to bring in that, because that person is capable of respect, they're just not using it. Right?
Absolutely.
So when the awareness is raised, when they start to look at the truth of the circumstance, then that light can begin to shine and transform that relationship.
That's right.
It is possible.
Well, it is possible, but then again, the question that comes forward is that we look to others as role models, and especially in the society, we get influenced by what the top people are doing. But unfortunately, of late, what we have been finding is with the advent of the media becoming more stronger, everything comes out very soon. Well, this used to exist earlier also, but because the media was not so strong, and with the advent of internet, anything happens anywhere in the world, it just comes across, and then that is also very demoralizing for the common person. For example, let's take the sports icons or the politicians or the religious leaders.
Right.
So over there, they have been exposed, and in the news we know about all the top people who have been exposed to having extramarital relations or going haywire. And that sends a very wrong signal, especially to the youngsters also. and then this commercialization whereby the woman is shown as an object,
Yes.
whereby she is exposed and she's brought forward in films and other things also. So how do you think that kind of mentality, which has an impact, and also the common public also just takes it for granted? Like for example, in Italy, there were talks that the prime minister over there, who was exposed in some scandals,
Yes.
the people were willing to re-elect him also.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what kind of mentality are the common masses having, and what does this influence has, and how to look further into it and how to come out of it?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it speaks to the moral reality of our culture. We're at a low ebb, you know, and perhaps in the past we used to elect our officials based on their character, you know, and you know, but it's not that way so much anymore. And I think we're mistaken actually to look at people who are just happen to be in the public eye.
Right.
I mean, Tiger Woods is a good golf player.
Oh, yeah.
You know, are we expecting him to be somehow far removed from everything, like from the things we are all dealing with? He just happens to be in the public eye.
Right.
You know, and is a role model for, but he struggles just like all of us.
Right.
So again, I think it's if we put too much, you know, I think we also, when we look to people, oh, they should have, and you know, point the finger, it actually takes the focus off us.
Right.
Because I really feel that we all have work to do, and if we're looking at everybody else and what they're doing, then we don't look at ourselves.
Right.
So I think we all each have that social responsibility, and the first work, or the first you know, work of order or what have you, is to look close to home.
Right.
You know, what am I doing? How am I being a model for my children? What is my relationship like with my spouse?
Right.
And go from there.
Very right. And you see, when you say that it should start from within the family, that of course we know that those icons whom we are talking about, why to follow them, what they have done? Why not see the end result?
Right.
That shame that which they had to face, and
Exactly.
all their prestige which got lowered.
Exactly. It's
irrespective
a
of the-
teachable moment.
Absolutely.
You know?
Rather, we should learn from that
That's
rather than
exactly
just
it.
trying to say that, oh, if they can do it, why can't we do it?
Well, and not only that, or vilify them, right? So they do it, we can do it, or
Right.
we make them, you know, to be the bad guy when that's actually hypocrisy.
Right.
Because it's happening so much all
That's right.
around in all our communities and everything. It's like it's only happening. No, it's not only happening over there.
Right.
You know.
With the shame associated with all this, you know, like in all the cultures, we find that, of course, that shame is there, that guilt is there. So how to heal that shame? And also, when you say about the family, that unit, how to have better understanding and communication between the families?
Okay, those are two big topics.
Let's talk first on the shame.
Healing shame, again, let's just reiterate that shame is a problem because it blocks our ability to connect, both spiritually as well as with each other.
Right.
You know, if we're feeling shame, we want to make sure that doesn't get seen, that part of us. If we've done something, we're going to use a lot of energy to protect ourselves from other people seeing that part of us. And so we put on an image to the outside world. And again, we work very hard at protecting that image.
Right.
So to get down to that core authentic self, you know, we need to start taking, again, it goes back to just being honest, finding someone that you can tell your truth to, whether it's a therapist or a 12-step program or a friend or your spouse or, you know, someone like me, a coach, you know, the beginning is just telling the truth.
Right.
It actually, you know, it's a cliche, but the truth does set you free. You know, it allows you to start dealing with the issue. If we're in secrecy,
Right.
the shame just remains. There's nowhere for the shame to go.
Right.
When we start, the power of these groups that I run for women, really, Harpreet, is that when women share in a very, very safe environment, they start to realize that they are not alone. We have this common experience. So many of us, when we're in that shame, we feel we are the worst person in the world, you know, and there's nobody like us, and it's somehow unique, when it's really not. You know, we all have this human experience of struggle.
Right.
And because we're living in this day of so much abuse, we have not only distortions, but damage. You know, we feel damaged in some way. And so when we share with one another, we get to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. you know, I have compassion for that person, why can't I have compassion for myself?
Right.
You know, and it starts to break up that shame that we feel. And it's a process. It doesn't
Right.
happen overnight. But the more light we bring in, the more positive relationships we have, the more we choose not to, you know, spend our time in that way that brings us shame, you know, we start to find our lives changed.
That's right, and absolutely you're right that shame is a barrier to spiritual connection and divine love.
It
And
is.
if you understand, grasp that particular aspect, then you can start working on that.
Exactly.
Okay, and towards the end, what we have talked about, the cultural attitudes. In all cultures, there's the same sense. It might be in a different way how it is perceived and how it is projected. So to start with, the family is a unit where it all needs to start.
Right.
But many times, again, because of shame and guilt, one doesn't want to come out and talk.
Right.
What will people say about it? But what would be your message with your experience, that if you realize whatever is happening in your life, you realize that yes, I have done something wrong and need to come back on the
Right.
path. So as you said, you can take some advice and all that, but how to start? Because you need to have some guts to come
You
out and
do.
accept
Yeah,
also.
it takes courage.
It takes courage to
Yeah.
come out. It's not just going to be somebody's going to listen and then, you know, all of a sudden he or she is going to come out.
Yeah.
So again, with your experience, what would be your message?
Well, it's to find a safe environment and someone who you trust that can, I mean, there are many programs out there. I do one-on-one coaching
Right.
over the phone. So it's private, it's somewhat anonymous. I invite people to call me to do an initial free coaching session to see whether this is something that they would be interested in pursuing with me. But it's to find a place. There's things on the internet too. There's many services that help people deal with sex addiction.
Right.
So there are services out there. It's just seeking them out.
Right.
You know,
But the first step is to honestly acknowledge.
to yourself.
That's right. And then
First to yourself.
Then come out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And-
And it needs to be safe. That's a real
Right.
key thing. Yeah.
Right. It was a
It's
pleasure.
not about, you know, putting it in the newspaper or anything like that, you know.
Of course.
It's really a private journey for every single person.
That's right. But
Yeah.
of course, sex and spirituality, they can be aligned. And if you, and this is a wonderful experience which God has given us, we can really enjoy it. But if we understand
Yes.
what it is and not just magnify it and just see it from a evil's eye, what is being projected in
Yes,
the society.
yes.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਵਿਸ਼ੇ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਲਚਰਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੈਕਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੇਮ ਅਤੇ ਗਿਲਟ ਵਜੋਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਮਝ ਸਕੀਏ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰੱਬ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦਾਤ ਬਖਸ਼ੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਮਿਸਯੂਜ਼ ਨਾ ਕਰੀਏ। ਅੱਜ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਟੁੱਟਦੇ ਪਏ ਨੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖੜੀ ਹੋਈ ਉਸ ਇਸੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚ ਸਮੱਸਿਆਵਾਂ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਘਰ ਟੁੱਟ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਛਤਾਉਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਕੋਈ ਸੌਖੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨੀ ਔਨ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਇਨੀਸ਼ੀਏਟਿਵ ਲਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ ਮੇਜਰ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਹੈ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਤੇ ਜੇਕਰ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ। ਸੋ ਆਓ ਸਾਰੇ ਯਤਨ ਕਰੀਏ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਮਸਲੇ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਸੁਹਿਰਦ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਯੰਗਸਟਰਸ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰੀਏ, ਪਰ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਇੱਕ ਲਿਮਿਟ ਦੇ ਦਾਇਰੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੀਜ਼ ਅਵੇਲੇਬਲ ਨੇ ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਲਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਜੀ। ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਲਈ 604 603 7555 ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਈਮੇਲ ਰਾਹੀਂ harpreet@akaltv.com ਤੇ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਤੇ ਐਡਵਰਟਾਈਜ਼ਰਸ ਦੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਦੌਲਤ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਸ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਦੇ ਨੇ। ਅਗਲੇ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਅੱਗੇ ਇਸ ਸੀਰੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਟੀਨਿਊ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ। ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਰੋ ਦਾ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ੋਅ। ਫਿਰ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਤਦ ਤੱਕ ਗੁੱਡ ਬਾਏ।